Welcome to Understanding Oklahoma, a series of conversations looking at the richness, but also the complexity of the cultures and histories that contribute to Oklahoma's distinctive identity. It's such a pleasure today to welcome Dr. George Henderson, one of my heroes. He's the author of 35 books and some 50 published articles. He's known as a trailblazer in race relations and has been honored throughout the country for his research and writings. He was the first African American to hold a distinguished professorship at the University of Oklahoma, the first to create a degree-granting department, and the first to be dean of a degree-granting college, and as I recall, an inductee into the Oklahoma Higher Education Hall of Fame and the African American Education Hall of Fame. I'm just going to stop there because we don't have enough time to give all of your creds. It would go on again, for a long time. So thank you for being here with us today, Dr. Henderson.
Thank you for inviting me. And normally I wouldn't suggest the other, but I think it's important for this show. Also inducted into the Oklahoma Hall of Fame.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, thank you for adding that. So would you please give us a kind of a comparison of the racial climate in Oklahoma when you came here in the 1960s, and then some sense of what you see in Oklahoma now, all these, 55, whatever it is, years later?
I came to perhaps the best possible place to understand race relations from a borderline southern and southwestern state. Because when I came, people like Claire Looper, Ada Lois Scipio Fisher, and I could go on and on, like who's who in Black America lived in Oklahoma City. And I heard even additional stories about how difficult life would be living in Norman, Oklahoma. But what was life like? All of them said there are challenges here, and our ancestors, they have long pedigrees of ancestors. Our ancestors came with the indigenous people, some of them said. And we have all black towns, but Norman is a different situation. What was it like? A challenge. I want to say a surprise, but it wasn't, because my mentor, who was chair of the anthropology sociology department, said, "Don't go there. You're part of the civil rights movement here in Detroit. Stay here. We need you. And besides, those people will not be receptive to your progressive ideas." Well, hey, there was a credibility gap between my mentor and myself, because he said he was in the Navy. And I knew there was no large body of water here. So I thought he was really making up the story about how difficult it would be for me. He was telling the truth. I can't begin to explain to you what it felt like realizing that I had been living a fantasy life as a teacher. All of my life, from when I was born to 4 years of college, I lived in an all-black neighborhood. And even after I got my master's degree and doctorate, I was still in an all-black neighborhood teaching people about race relations and integration. And my family didn't desegregate any community in Detroit, but we were encouraging others to do it. So you ask, what was Oklahoma? Oklahoma was like an awakening for George Henderson as a teacher. I had students, some of them in Detroit, they were freedom riders. I didn't ride a bus in the South. These are white students, and I'm encouraging them to go and be part of the movement. I indeed was involved in desegregating neighborhoods in Detroit and other areas. I didn't move my family into one of those areas. So what was Oklahoma like? In answer to your question, it was my moment of truth. Put up George Henderson or shut up.
George, let me follow up on that, because I know a lot of people really want to do social activism for social justice. And I know that it was rough when you came here. There were crosses burning in yards at times, bricks being thrown through windows. You're a modest person, but it was very, very challenging. What was your secret? You somehow created, I think, around you a world that was sustainable, that could work for you. But what was your secret in doing that? I mean, the challenge couldn't have been greater, I don't think.
The secret is people need people. I needed people called my immediate family first, but then I also needed people called my extended family second. Mm-hmm. And my extended family consisted of people who were not Hendersons. And in fact, in Norman, our extended family were mostly non-white Hendersons. So you ask what it was like? Of course it was difficult. I had pangs of conscience and guilt about bringing my family into harm's way. I was going out into other communities and putting myself in harm's way, but not once ever, did I take my family into neighborhoods and communities that were extremely hostile to black people. But I brought an entire family plus a mother-in-law here to this place. What was it like? How did I do it? How did we do it? It's never how did I do it. I'm reminded that Jackie Robinson said we pioneers or trailblazers should not take pride in being the first, but we should take pride in the second, the third, and so forth. Well, George Henderson and his family, we don't take much pride in being the first, but we take a heck of a lot of pride in the second, the third, and so forth, with the help of our allies. And our allies, I want to tell you about them. All of the bad things that happened to us, and there were bad things that happened to us, stopped by the police. I stopped counting with the police how many times they would stop me in my neighborhood, but I remembered I'd been stopped by the police in Detroit. That was nothing novel or new. I'd been called the N-word more times than I can remember in Detroit. That was not new to me either. And I can go on and on and on. But what was new, that it never occurred to me and happened to me and my family in our neighborhood,
One of the things I hear in what you say is that you are a builder, and you would have been a builder no matter where you went. And you would have found a way to build. You would have taken what was at hand. You wouldn't have cried about what wasn't there. You would have worked with what was, and you would build. And that's an amazing story. That's really incredible.
I was born into poverty. We had virtually nothing. And my family was on and off welfare until I was in ninth grade. We had very little, but we had pride and we had tenacity. And my mother instilled in me and anybody else who would listen the concept of reconciliation, forgiveness, and love. My father instilled in me the ability to fight back. If you can't fight back with your fist, fight back with your words, but speak up. So I was pre-built as a child. But
George, what is a sundown town, and how does that come into your experience in Oklahoma?
I thought I knew what it was. I really did. Sundown town is places where you can work there, you can shop there, but be out of town before the sun would go down. Otherwise, bad things would happen and did happen in this community and others throughout the United States. But for me, sundown town meant I would have to leave my home, and that was not going to happen. And you ask that question, it reminds me of another thing that I must tell all people coming to Norman. You come as a family. And often, the strongest person who you think you see is not the strongest person in that unit. The reason George Henderson stayed in Norman, Oklahoma, truth be told, was because Barbara Henderson had unpacked all of our belongings from Detroit and moved into the house, and she said she wasn't going to pack up again until we, meaning her and George, were ready to go. And she said, "We will leave this town not a moment earlier or later than when we are ready." I could have gone, we could have gone. Pick a university. When I received my doctorate in educational sociology, there were exactly 13 black educational sociologists in the United States. And I had offers from pick a university or a region. We could have gone elsewhere for more money.
We're so fortunate that you stayed here. You're talking about the atmosphere in Oklahoma. Could you talk a little bit more about the uniqueness of the Oklahoma experience and the history of civil rights in America?
The uniqueness of Oklahoma is that we had very strong, high-achieving black people in Oklahoma before George Henderson came. I, as an adjunct instructor, taught about school desegregation and its disciplinary versus the Board of Education in Oklahoma, the higher educations. I knew about Italoa Scipio Fisher before I really knew about Oklahoma, because they were already here. The Jimmy Stewarts and the Hannah Atkins, and I could go on and on and on. They were already here. And for George Henderson to come and have the first dinner engagement that we had was in Northeast Oklahoma City in Claire Luper's house.
Wow.
And then to have those leaders say, George, we started something here years ago, and it's your turn and time to finish it.
Wow. Wow, I like that story. You have written that Oklahoma is kind of a frontier in race relations. What did you mean by that?
You read my biography.
Mm-hmm.
All of the things that you mentioned that I have accomplished was unheard of in Oklahoma before I did it in most other communities like this. It was all here, perhaps for the taking if someone dared come and take it. The frontier means opportunity and also danger. I could have been killed. I could have settled just for teaching. There are many things I could have done, but the frontier means you can either drop your stake and build your house and stay inside of it and value and keep what you have, or you can look outside of your window and say, there's more here to be done. There's more to be built, and that's what, yeah, I'm wound up that way. I have to not just be content for what I'm doing, but as the leaders, the black leaders in Oklahoma instilled in me, but even before I got here, Martin Luther King Jr. and even Malcolm X, who I became friends with, said, we are about the business of helping the next generation of us and not ourselves. Well, I came, and the Hendersons then decided our business was to improve the lives of the next generation of us. And us is an inclusive term for the Hendersons. There's no I in we, and there's no I in us. And so we embraced this community with all of the dangers. But every time we said yes to something, and our non-black friends said yes to the same things, they were at risk also. A real estate, the people who sold us our house lost their business. I could go on and on and on. The unsung heroes are not just the George Hendersons that are stage center in most activities. Every award that I have earned, I was able to earn them in the most unlikely place, Oklahoma.
You've really added something to what I think what we were talking about earlier. I mean, clearly you are a builder and you would build anywhere, but I think you also had vision. I think you're a visionary person. So you could see possibilities where other people saw the glass is half empty. You saw that, no, it's half full. We can work with this. I think that's a really important component to go right alongside being the builder, that you're a visionary person.
My creator, and I say this without any fear or pride, my creator gave me probably basically one gift: teaching. I don't do most things well, but somehow I was born with the ability. After I got out of special education and started being an achiever, I saw things and read things, and they made sense to me. They were disparate pieces, and I could see how putting it together. For example, when I read The Tale of Two Cities, I realized black and white. Reading about the French Revolution, I understood the battle of us who were involved in it. So somehow as a kid, I thought about challenges and how perhaps we can overcome them. You're right. You're absolutely right. I think all of us who are considered pioneers or high achievers or risk takers, I think we're born with that inside. Maybe you can learn it.
It's a gift. I think it's a gift, really.
Yes.
George, I want to think especially about the very young people that might watch this segment, and they won't have heard these things from anybody else. They needed to hear it from you, what Oklahoma was like so many years ago, and what you found to be an opportunity, although it would seem like danger to somebody else. Could you give them 2 or 3 takeaways, things that could be useful for them to continue to think about, that would maybe lead them in a direction that's going to be productive?
What I will try to give them is a sense of family, and the families in Norman, the Hendersons in particular, and our friends. If we talk about George Henderson in isolation of his wife and his children, then we're not really talking about all of George Henderson. What I would tell parents, if you send your children to the University of Oklahoma, they're going to be interacting with other people's children. Mine did. In fact, our children helped desegregate the Norman public. Well, you got 7. You got a lot of schools you can make an influence over. But it was the relationships, the friendships that our children built that allowed us then as a family to feel secure that this is home, not just for the parents, but for the children and their children's children. And that has indeed been the case. I would tell them that you'll find all kinds of people elsewhere, but for the life of me, I don't know how the Hendersons could have survived in any other place in Oklahoma except Norman. Mm-hmm. I pick another university town, and I don't think we would have stayed or survived there. Well, first, we wouldn't have been invited there. Obviously, we were not.
So the takeaway is to connect with the people around you, I think, is right. Build community.
You send your child into a community, and they have to build their own communities. But also, you ought to be ready, as our family is, to help them. And we're grandparents, we're uncles, we're aunts, we're friends, we're colleagues with people. What I would tell them, there are people here. Some are good and some are not so good. Some are caring and some are not so caring. But there are people here. And the uniqueness of Oklahoma, from my perspective, is this. We came from Detroit and we were part of the Detroit community. And you know you're part of the community when you go to social functions and you start kissing people on the cheeks and on the lips and everywhere else and hugging. They did the same thing in Oklahoma. So I found out these are people saying welcome.
Yeah.
I don't know, well, I do think I know why people don't understand this community, this place. It's a special place. I'll get back to where we started. I cannot think of a single place outside of Norman, Oklahoma, that would have allowed me to achieve what I have achieved. Yeah. And I attribute that to the students, second, my colleagues, and third, so forth, and overarching all of that, my children and my wife and my mother and my mother-in-law. We were all here. We were together. We were all achieving together.
I think you would have achieved a lot anywhere that you went. George, thank you so much for being our guest today. I want to thank you for being with us, and please watch other segments of Understanding Oklahoma.